Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Josh.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are the Hiking Fools, bringing you unique personal insight on Glacier National Park that you can't get anywhere else. In this episode, we are discussing the Mount Brown Lookout hike. And Sarah, we worked at Lake McDonald Lodge, and this looms right above the lodge. This is the mountain that you see right across the road. The Sperry Trailhead leads up to it. There are other hikes that branch off from this trailhead, and we'll get to those, but Mount Brown Lookout, a classic hike in Glacier National Park. So to set the stage, Mount Brown is, we like to call it the gold standard of hikes, at least named and tracked hikes in Glacier, because it's 1,000 feet of elevation gain in approximately 1 mile. This is approximation, but 1,000 feet over the course of 1 mile is like 1-to-1 ratio. That's steep. Our old friend Hiking Mike, he calls it a calf burner, and I would agree. It's like straight up. You head on the Sperry Trailhead, which starts right across from Lake McDonald Lodge.
It's a very popular trail, but not many people commit to it.
That's right. And you've got a couple of other options if you start out on it and you just can't hack it, which is possible, and that's okay. You build up to it. But there's a couple of other trails right off of the Sperry Trail. And what do you reach first? You have some options, too. There's some horseback riding.
Yeah, you have Swan Mountain Outfitters that you can book a half day, a full day tour. And it's a great way to explore the old growth forest of Glacier Park there, right around Lake McDonald Lodge.
Yeah, right on. I think my buttocks would do a half day and not the full day on the horse, if that's okay. We've ridden it before. I'm allergic to anything with hair besides humans, and Sarah loves animals, and so we've done it. I've done it for her. We were just talking about doing things to impress girls, and I did it. It wasn't comfortable and not necessarily enjoyable, but I'll go anywhere with her.
I think you were a good sport about it. Smiles all around.
So the Mount Brown Lookout Trail, we've got a lot to say about. It's a very interesting hike. It's got a wonderful view of Lake McDonald and the opposing side mountain range, and it's just a great place to get up to and view this west side of the park. So the lookout itself, Sarah, what's the lookout like?
Well, it's a 2-story structure. It's got old clapboard siding. It's kind of measures around 196 square feet. And it's on a loft tower with a catwalk. Mount Brown, the summit of Mount Brown, I think, is 8,569 feet.
8,500, we'll call it that, yeah.
Yeah, you like to say that. The fire tower at the top of Mount Brown is a very historic structure. It was built in 1928 on the southwest ridge at an elevation of around 7,480 feet. It's one of the oldest remaining lookouts in the park.
It's super cool. And yeah, I'm going to approximate things here. It's a 7,500-foot lookout and an 8,500-foot summit, which we'll get to a little bit. We want to make sure people understand that this isn't for inexperienced hikers, especially any peak that we describe. The hike to the lookout is fine. There's no extra skill needed to finish it off other than a physical capacity to climb up a huge slope heading up to this lookout, which again is a pretty neat architectural structure in itself.
Yeah, it's 2 stories, and oftentimes you have a creature that guards it, actually. I think every time we've been up there, there's a mountain goat that sometimes is actually up on the catwalk, but there's usually 1 or 2 hanging around, even in the winter if you brave that, when there's not high avalanche danger. But it's pretty cool to see them. We've encountered a lot of grouse around there. They always spook you.
When you're on the lookout for grizzly bear, a grouse coming out of the brush really freaks you out.
Well, they allow you to get at least 2 or 3 feet close to them before they take off.
They do it on purpose.
Yeah.
They do it to me on purpose. So the need to know before you go is that this trail gains almost 4,500 feet in about 5 miles. We counted, I can't remember if it's 27 or 29 switchbacks on this trail. So you've got, you can make a game out of it because you're suffering anyway.
Well, and let's be clear, the Sperry Trail starts out and it branches off as you go. When you make the junction towards the left, towards Mount Brown, that's when you start counting those switchbacks, because there are some other little switchbacks until you get to that point. Don't count those. Those are pretty steep too, but you don't actually want to make a game out of it, as Josh says, and count them until you get on the trail.
And this trailhead, we'll mention this because Sperry Trail, Mount Brown, as Sarah mentioned, is a junction off to the left. We've got, if you keep going, you can get all the way to Sperry Chalet, which we'll cover in a future episode, and Como Pass and some of these places near the glacier, unbelievable. But Snyder Lakes and Fish Lake, there are a fair amount of hikes that lead right off of this trailhead.
Yeah, you can actually keep going on the Fish Lake Trail. It's kind of poorly maintained and overgrown, but it's the Snyder Ridge Trail. And it goes west for about 8 miles, which makes its way winding and kind of eventually back to the Going to the Sun Road above Lake McDonald. Not really recommended. There's a lot of other great things to see instead of that.
We're going to tell you the truth. I mean, a lot of these hikes are named and the trails are great, but Sarah and I are going to tell you what we like and why, and you don't have to hit every single trail in Glacier.
Actually, Fish Lake isn't so bad. It sets at about 4,100 feet. It's a little lake nestled into the forest on Snyder Ridge. It's very near Sprague Creek, and it's about 2.8 miles to the lake, and it only gains over 1,000 feet. I guess it's a little steep, but a nice little spot to hang out, have a snack, and turn around and come back.
And you make a good point. I mean, it depends what you're looking for, right? We're talking about vistas and we're talking about steep slopes, but if you're looking for a nice woodsy lake that's easy to access, that might be the hike for you.
Yeah, and if you don't want to do Mount Brown, you also have Snyder Lakes. It's a bit steep as well. It's 4.8 miles. There is a little campground there, a backcountry campground. I believe it has around 3 sites. It's a good place to fish. It's known for their cutthroat trout. And you're right along Snyder Creek all the way. And Snyder, boy, he's got a name for himself in Glacier, a bit of a maverick, so they say. He built the first hotel on Lake McDonald and ran a steamship there in 1895. The hotel, he called it the Glacier House. It wasn't quite Lake McDonald, but on the same site. He only had that for a few years and sold it off to the Hills, and they continued to build it and make it Lake McDonald Lodge. And he was a settler, a big part of the development around Lake McDonald. Snyder Lakes, it sits at about 5,230 feet. Above, you've got Mount Brown, Little Matterhorn, and Edwards. It's full of Douglas fir and larch and subalpine fir. It's a pretty neat area, too.
I love it. I mean, every hike you say, well, it's a bit steep, and that's funny because you're going to go, I mean, that's what Glacier's about, gaining some elevation, getting some of these views, seeing the different types of landscape and wildlife. I mean, this heads up through the woods at first, the big cedar forest, and then you emerge. You can kind of follow Snyder Creek the whole way, and Snyder Creek's a great place right near Lake McDonald to sit and listen to the creek. It pours right into Lake McDonald. I love the fact that you follow Snyder Creek all the way up this trail, and eventually things change and it opens up, and eventually you get some great views of what's ahead.
I really enjoy the beginning of this trail, actually. I mean, it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to warm up, but the beginning of it is an old growth northern coniferous forest. It's much like most of the west side, but it's kind of a significant area that stretches from this section all the way up to Avalanche. There's a constant flow of wet Pacific air. It's like a rainforest.
It is. And it's the first time I've ever heard you say that, because a lot of people dislike this trail for the steep portions of it going up. And as Tom Petty said, the hardest part is coming down.
Well, and I don't know if you noticed, but I mentioned the beginning. I really enjoy the beginning. I mean, I love the trail. I love hiking, but you really have to be in good shape for this trail and expect the steepness going up. And you get a little relief going down, but, it reefs on your toes and your knees, bring poles, but don't let those sort of things hold you back.
No, always go. And it's true. It's a different challenge. It's a cardio challenge on the way up, and it's a strength and stamina challenge on the way down. It pounds your body a little bit, but we know a lot of you out there hiked, in other places and can easily tackle this.
Well, and part of the mountain, Mount Brown itself, just below the cliffs, if you're down below and kind of looking up, there's a cliff section. Down below that, part of it burned in 2017. It was caused by the Sprague fire, and it was lightning caused. It burned some of Sperry Chalet, which again we'll cover in later episodes. and the visitor center in Waterton. So it kind of spread around. Fires can be devastating, but they're so important to the natural cycle. They rejuvenate the forest from an ecological standpoint. So even though they're kind of frustrating sometimes and they cause devastation, they're really, really important. But Mount Brown itself is one of several constructed fire towers that happened between the 1920s and the 1940s. So it's still pretty cool to see. And thankfully, it's never burned.
Yeah, that was sad to see that on the ridge driving up the road toward Lake McDonald a few years ago. But, that's like you mentioned, that's part of the natural state of the park. And we're going to take a short commercial break, but stick with us. We've got another segment coming right up.
Hello, this is Don Bennett, president of Freedom Bank in Columbia Falls. If you've ever wondered if it matters where you deposit your hard-earned money, let me assure you it does. Freedom Bank takes in local deposits and distributes loans that feed into a self-sustaining microeconomy and keeps the funds right here in the Flathead Valley. Banking locally supports local businesses that continue the cycle of locally based economic growth. Freedom Bank, we want to be your bank.
Welcome back. We are the Hiking Fools, and today we're talking about the Mount Brown Lookout Trail, a tremendous hike in Glacier, a difficult hike, but don't let that turn you back. And we were discussing the fires in this area, and we've seen them too close for comfort, really. I mean, the time that we were watching this happen, as you mentioned, the road was closed off right at that point. It was so smoky. It was glowing. I mean, it's so eerie to see these fires.
Yeah, we were actually there the year that the Sperry Chalet burned down. It was so sad. We were at the Lake McDonald Lodge complex and kind of looking up on the edge of Mount Brown. And at that time, the fire was right there, and it wasn't until later on that we learned the chalet had burned. And we've been there before when there was a fire on Howe Ridge right across from Lake McDonald, and that was kind of sad. We went in the morning, and the fire was just this tiny little dot, and we thought, oh, they got a handle on this. We watched the big super scoopers come through and from Canada and scoop up water off Lake McDonald, and that was kind of neat to see with our kids and stuff. But also we were like, oh, man, I hope this doesn't blow up. Even though fires are important, there were so many historical structures around there. And then we went over on the other side of the park, and just a few hours later came back, and the whole ridgeline was blown up, and homes were being burnt in the park there, and that was kind of sad.
Yeah, for sure. I don't even know how to describe watching a forest fire, but it's right there, and we're mentioning it because this happened on Mount Brown. The landscape changes as you're hiking this trail. You'll find that the undergrowth and even some of the berries that appear, the huckleberries and the thimbleberries on this trail, are unbelievable if you're going at the right time of the year.
Yeah, the rejuvenation after a fire is pretty important. So
rebirth, rising up from the ashes.
Yes. That's why these fire towers are so important. They didn't have all this technology they do now. Now it's all air observation, and most of the lookouts aren't manned anymore. In fact, Mount Brown was last manned in 1971.
So the structures remain, but the purpose has changed over the years. And speaking of the lookout, Sarah, here's a little secret. If you paddle out onto the lake and look back at Mount Brown, what you see is a Native American chief, the profile, and it's unbelievable. You see the forehead dipping down into the nose and the chin, and it's so realistic. But you can see this from even closer.
Yeah, and you don't actually have to go out on the lake, even though that's a great way to view Mount Brown. You can stand at Lake McDonald Lodge right in the front there and look over Jammer Joe's restaurant, and you can see the profile. And in the fall, the leaves change color and it looks like a headdress. So it's really beautiful. I don't think it's supposed to be anybody specifically, the chief or whatever. In fact, the mountain, it's a bit of a debate who the mountain is named after. Lewis Brown, a Montana pioneer, an early one, or is it named after William Brown, someone who climbed it in 1894? He was probably the first European. Nobody knows for sure, but the name stuck, and that's what we're calling it today.
Mount Brown. Lewis, William, John, Joe, Pete, Steve, whoever it was, it's Mount Brown, and it's a terrific hike, and it's so easy to access. And you said it, and I want to draw attention to it again. the profile of the Native American chief, in the fall, in the seasons as they change, the headdress changes color, and it's just beautiful. It's incredible. It's immaculate, and it's so fun to look at. And yeah, if you paddle out on the lake, you can see even a better perspective of it. Not always easy to do, but we just want to mention that as like kind of a fun, unique experience.
And the Kootenai name is Wolf Hat. Kind of interesting.
All right. Yeah. I like hearing the origin of some of these names, the features in Glacier. You mentioned Jammer Joe's. Is that still what it is today? I mean, we downed a lot of pizza at this place, and I love to if you get one scoop huckleberry, one scoop chocolate, one scoop vanilla, it's a terrific sundae, and it's a great place to come down from this hike and just pig out.
We know Lake McDonald really well. This is where we met 20 years ago and spent a lot of time. The menu has changed over the last 20 years at Jammer Joe's, but it's still, when you're coming off the trail and that's all you can talk about on your way down is food, you don't care what it is. And the pizza's good, the ice cream's good.
And that's all you need.
Lake McDonald does have a dining room too, so you have a few options, but
yeah, there are hikers. I mean, it's a little bit of fancier place, but there are hikers in there. And we got to mention our friend Dana that's worked there for almost 40 years. We worked with him, serving tables. Sarah and I go back every September on our anniversary to eat at Lake McDonald Lodge because it's such a special place for us.
We try to have Dana wait on us to kind of relive those awesome memories of living on the complex there. Such a cool time.
So the reason Mount Brown is such an attraction, it's just right there beckoning. If you're at Lake McDonald Lodge, it's on this popular trailhead, so it's easy to get to right inside the west entrance. And I do want to say for you more experienced hikers that summiting Mount Brown is unbelievable as well. I mean, this is not for the beginner. Please know before you go, know your limits.
This is off-trail route.
Right. We don't necessarily recommend it to everybody, but we went with a good friend, a summit team, and went from the lookout. It's another 1,000 feet in elevation, and about another mile, and it's really, really fun. One of the best views in the park from the summit of Mount Brown.
Yeah, it's mostly class 3. It's pretty steep, as Josh said, but there is a touch of some light class 4. So like also Josh said, make sure you are very experienced and know exactly what you're doing. There's books out there. Don't commit to something that you don't understand, and always have the ability to turn around.
And there are plenty of resources. Check those out. But it's really fun. You're picking your way left and right over this knife-like ridge, and you're in a great spot in the park to view the rest of the peaks and the summits from Mount Brown. I did this once in 2005 by myself, not recommended either. Not smart, really. But back to the impressing the girl, and folks, I'll tell you, she's right here with me, so I guess it worked. But she and I went back 20 years later and did it together with a real good friend, and it's just an unbelievable experience. But we're talking mostly about the lookout, but from the lookout, you can see the summit, and if you decide to summit, you can look down and see the lookout stretching out above Lake McDonald.
I'll tell you what, the views from the fire tower are spectacular, so don't feel the need to push on and do something you're not comfortable with. In fact, before you even get up to the lookout, as you approach the cliffs on the Mount Brown Trail, the views open up of Lake McDonald, and sometimes you get a little cloud movement, sometimes you get a little fog, sometimes it's bright blue, we call it Montana blue sky, but the views are spectacular before you even get up to the fire tower, and once you're there, it's amazing.
It's big and it's blue, the sky, the lake. This is the last best place. So other considerations to get to this trailhead, you park at Lake McDonald. There's a fair amount of parking there. Fills up pretty quickly, but right across the road is the Sperry Trailhead, which leads you up to Mount Brown Lookout. And there's some supplies and snacks right there at the camp store, some water, but get it before you go.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of water once you get on the Mount Brown Trail. You know, in the beginning, you hike along the creek there and the river, Snyder Creek, Sprague Creek. But once you get on the Mount Brown Trail, there's not a whole lot of water. So make sure you bring plenty of it because you are going to sweat and you're going to need it.
Be ready for anything. We like to say layers and bear spray for sure. We've heard growls on this trail.
We have a few stories of some interesting noises coming off the trail. So make sure you have your bear spray and be prepared. Be very bear aware. Pack in, pack out. Don't leave anything behind. Leave no trace, as they like to say.
So come in that west entrance, the popular west entrance, drive along Lake McDonald, park at the lodge. Across the street is the trailhead. Mount Brown Lookout, 4,500 feet of elevation and about 5 miles, the gold standard for an actual named and groomed hiking trail in the park. It's kind of what we compare everything else against. But it's a terrific hike. It's a classic. You really want to get on the Mount Brown Lookout Trail.
Before we go out on a new hike, I always ask Josh, so how does this compare to the Mount Brown Trail? You know, that 1,000 feet elevation gain in a mile, it's hard to do. And so I often compare most trails to that. Okay, how is it compared to the Mount Brown Trail?
Be ready for a grunt. You'll be breathing heavily and maybe cursing under your breath, but you're in it together. So go with a good group of people and enjoy this hike. And we'd love for you to tune in next time. We'll be talking further about this trailhead leading up to Sperry Chalet, Como Pass, some other terrific, the Glacier, Sperry Glacier, some other terrific options. And remember to follow the podcast on Apple or Spotify. I'm Josh.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are the Hiking Fools, encouraging you to always go.